You're listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with Lyndia Grant.
Well, good evening, Radio 1 listeners. Thank you for tuning in to The Lyndia Grant Show. Today is Friday, November the 24th, Thanksgiving weekend. Our show is heard throughout the DMV live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can find us on YouTube each and every week. Subscribe to YouTube, The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things and you'll get a copy. I just wanted you to know that we are excited to be here on Spirit 1340 WYCB, the oldest gospel radio station in the country. And we are pleased to be here on WYCB. We were supposed to have two guests today, but the attorney Dana Stebbins that you've been hearing for a while now, for the last few months, has a family emergency. She had a nephew that she's very close to, her sister's son, had to get taken to the hospital early this morning. Something going on with his heart, and the whole family is there, so she just wasn't able to focus to do the show today. And I gave Dr. Julianne the option. We can play a rerun or you can do the whole show. And Dr. J said we can do the whole show. How are you today, Dr. Julianne?
I am wonderful, wonderful, and happy Thanksgiving week. So many things for us to be thankful for. And I know picked up the Informer the other day, saw your column. I said, oh, yes, that is a woman of God. But I'm doing well, enjoying the weekend, working, but enjoying the weekend.
Good. Let me tell people, in case there's some guests in town listening and they don't know you. Dr. Julianne Malveaux is a nationally known economist, dean at Cal State Los Angeles for a couple of years, and she's back in D.C. now. She's one of two president emeritus at Bennett College, and they named a building there after her. She has her Ph.D. in economics, world traveler, speaker. I'm so excited. She's everywhere, all over the place. She's the president of Push Excel, the youth organization founded by Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson out of Chicago. And welcome to today's show. Dr. Julianne going to talk the first half and the second half, politics and the economy. And so, Dr. Julianne, we're going to start right off talking about we avoided a shutdown. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. You know, I don't know whether to exhale or hold my breath, but it's good news that we would have been shut down on Friday, November 17th, but they made a last-minute deal. The Democrats basically saved the day. The Republicans repudiated their new speaker, Mike Johnson, with many of them going against him. Well, the Democrats pulled it out, and therefore we did not have a shutdown. It went from the House to the Senate, and the Senate, again, it was 87 to 11. 11 Republican senators voted against basically keeping government open. Now, I understand what people are talking about. First of all, when I say I don't know whether to exhale or hold my breath, the shutdown was averted, but it was only averted for a few weeks. Now, what Mike Johnson has proposed is a two-part series of continuing resolutions and or new budgets. The two-part series, one part will, if it's not fixed, part of government will close on January 19th. And the other part will close on February 2nd. So while all of us are talking about we're having our Thanksgiving, and they are too because they're on recess, well, they need to come back and get down to work. I mean, the fact is that they lost 3 weeks' worth of work because they couldn't agree on a speaker. They went back and forth and round the block about a speaker. And, you know, while Democrats are a mess, and I will say that as a Democrat, Republicans are crazy. From the perspective that their whole caucus is fractured. You've got that group, the Crazy Eights, as Kevin McCarthy calls them, the eight who basically pushed him out. They couldn't do it by themselves, and they keep blaming the Democrats, say, well, the Democrats could have helped. No, that's not our job to help Republicans make a mess. But you have the Crazy Eights, and then you have the Freedom Caucus. It's about 30 of them. They want draconian cuts in the budget. And then you have the moderates who are afraid. I mean, what's really happening with Republicans, from my perspective, is that they're afraid of the orange man. And so they're afraid to speak out because they don't want to alienate the orange man. And I say the orange man because I don't like to curse on your show. Mm-hmm. And if I have to say anything about that man, it would be profanity laden. Mm-hmm. Even though we are professional newscasters, professional journalists, there's some words that just whatever. In any case, Mike Johnson ran his little self down to Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday to meet with the orange man. And so you can see the influence that this man still has on the Republican Party. Of course, he is the front runner in terms of any of the Republican polls. Who's the front runner? He's far ahead of either Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, although Nikki Haley is coming up. But the bottom line is we're up for some hard times. I was with some folks who 80 organizations, the Center for Popular Democracy, the Economic Policy Institute, SEIU, many others, have asked their members to write to President Biden and ask him to resist any draconian cuts. Some of the cuts that I've been hearing about, Lyndia, have been frightening. An 80% cut on Head Start. Now, that's not definitive, but it's one of the proposals. Cutting Head Start, cutting Title I, which is education for poor children, cutting libraries and the arts and the humanities. Republicans believe all these things are extra. You really don't need them. So they would fund, of course, defense and transportation and Veterans Affairs, but everything else is on the chopping block. And so this is going to be, we can enjoy our holidays, but believe me, these folks, first of all, need to come back to work and put in at least a few days before they go off for their Christmas break. But secondly, we need to be ready for them when they come back in January. We need to be calling our members of Congress, writing them, and letting them know that we do not want draconian cuts on basically things that people need, human needs. They would cut the WIC program. I mean, the list is so long, and it's all the things that we know that people depend on. So food stamps, or they're no longer called food stamps, but they would cut food, everything. Mm-hmm. So we averted a shutdown, which all this would have happened in November 17th. It didn't. So this is just like putting a pin in it. I will get back to you. So as I said, many people exhaled and said, oh, yes, we didn't have a shutdown. But a lot of other people like me are holding their breath because we don't know what comes next.
So is that affecting our economy with the holidays coming up? What does that have to do with it?
Well, the economy is affected. We have to really look at what's going on with the economy. People are spending money. They will spend money during the holidays. GDP growth, that's gross domestic product growth, is stable. So we've not seen growth dip at all. And inflation is going down. So those are both good things. But I always tell people when they ask me what I think, I say stack your money. Because if you work for the federal government, ask yourself, how many weeks could you go without a paycheck? I mean, that's a question. If government shuts down, how many weeks could you go without a paycheck? How long would your landlord give you a break? What would you have to do about food? Most Americans, Lyndia, don't even have $400 to cover emergencies. Mm-hmm. Most Americans cannot cover emergencies. $400, your tire blows out. You put it on your credit card because you don't have the cash. Mm-hmm. And so people have to ask themselves, how long could I do without? And in asking yourself that, then you have to say, well, what kind of changes are we going to make? Now, the polling people always do, the consumer confidence people and others do a lot of polling about what people are planning to spend. We know that the average American is planning to spend about $800 on their Thanksgiving activities, dinner, whatever else they do, parties, average. The average American is planning to spend about almost $1,950 on Christmas activities, gifts, meals, etc. Both numbers are down from where they were 2 years ago. We're not going to count the COVID years. We count pre-COVID. So we'll count 2020, even though we kind of were in COVID then too. So maybe we'll count 2019. So spending is going to be a little bit down, but it's not going to be noticeable. $10 here, $10 there. But what I would say to people is just be careful, because you don't know what's going on. Our economy is in flux. That's just real. And it's in flux partially because of this government situation, but it's also in flux because the parameters are not there. Now, unemployment is beautifully low. Inflation is coming down. It's not as bad as it was. But people see you and I and Jane Jones and Tamika Smith, we're not thinking that our average American is not thinking about inflation or unemployment when they have a job. They're thinking about, I went to the store and eggs were $6 a dozen. That's what they're thinking. They're like, how are we paying so much for eggs? They're thinking hamburger meat is higher than it used to be. So people personalize the economy. So this is why President Biden is getting such a bad rap. I mean, his poll numbers are in the toilet. And young people are really not feeling him at all. Yeah. Young people are basically saying no. They're shaking their head no at President Biden, partially because of the Middle Eastern conflict, which we can talk about later, but partially also because they feel he's too old. And that keeps coming up, even though the orange man is only a couple years younger, but they feel he's too old. His aspect is not hearty. I would say that. I watch him every time he gets on the podium. Lyndia, I pray. I just said, let the brother sound good. Don't fall down those steps.
That's right.
I just pray for him.
I do too.
And we should. But, the Democratic Party is stubbornly saying he's it. He is the incumbent president unless he steps aside. And so all these things, inflation, basically the perception of economic weakness, the actual bite at the cash register, all these are combining to undermine President Biden's strength. And so people who care about him or who want him to see him run need to support him. But here's the other thing, and there's a whole lot of racism and sexism up in here, if I can say up in here. When I talk to my melanin deficient friends and colleagues, they say immediately, if something happens to him, do you think Kamala is ready to be president? And the answer to that will be, yes, she's ready. She's been the vice president all these years. She's been doing a very good job. So when they ask if she's ready, I'm wondering if there's a little bit of racism up in there.
That's what I think.
Sexism up in there.
Because you know how well she performed when she was a senator. She was always outstanding, wasn't she?
She really was. And on top of it, very well organized, well prepared. So when these people say they don't know, if she's ready, what I said to a woman just 2 days ago, I said, no, I really want to know, are you ready? See, are you ready for a competent Black Asian woman, because there's a Black Asian woman, to be president of the United States? And I said, I don't think you're ready. It's not her, it's you.
We're going to go to a commercial break, and we're going to come back and talk to Dr. Julianne Malveaux some more. When we return, she's going to be talking about what's going on, the deal between Israel and Hamas. Back in a moment after our commercial break.
If it wasn't for my care coach at AmeriHealth, I probably wouldn't be so healthy right now. As a man, we don't get checkups or see a doctor regularly anyways. It's probably just a man thing because none of my partners go either. We know we should, but we just don't, and hope it works out.
So what changed for you?
AmeriHealth assigned me a care coach, somebody that gives one-on-one help, answer questions, explain things, and help set my appointments. She also helped me understand what having high blood pressure really means and ways to manage it so it doesn't kill me. It ain't nothing to play with. If you're a member of AmeriHealth, ask for a care coach. I'm glad I got mine.
At AmeriHealth, if you need a care coach, you can have one. Just call us at 1-877-759-6224 to get connected. 1-877-759-6224. This program is funded in part by the government of the District of Columbia Department of Healthcare Finance. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Washington and former religion columnist Lyndia Grant. Who Moved My Cheese is a book about two types of people, those who accept change quickly and move on, and those who hem and haw and try to figure things out. They didn't see change coming and waste valuable time trying to figure out what happened. How did this happen to me? Let's call this group procrastinators. The lesson inside the cheese story is simple. Life is change. Brother said it best when he said, if I accept you as you are, I will make you worse. However, if I treat you as though you are what you're capable of becoming, I help you become that. We must change and keep moving. The Bible tells us to seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open unto you, ask and it shall be given.
Read more in the religion column of the Washington Informer, an award-winning African-American newspaper. We don't report crime or gossip, just positive news. Pick up the Washington Informer or visit us online at WashingtonInformer.com. Call 202-561-4100 for more information.
This is Frank Smith with the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C., located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest on the Green Line. Did you know that a recent study found that children who visit museums do better in school and in life than children who do not? So parents, teachers, and preachers, let's get moving. I promise you, if you bring your children to the African American Civil War Museum, they will be inspired by the images that they see. They will be impressed by our living history reenactors who are always available, and they will be involved in our scavenger hunt that takes them throughout our exhibit. That's the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Our hours are 10 to 6:30 on weekdays, 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. See it, be inspired.
And we are back. We are talking to Dr. Julianne Malveaux. Now we're going to go to the second half of our show. Dr. J, what is the deal between Israel and Hamas?
Well, as we speak, they're negotiating a hostage release. There are about 230 hostages. Nobody really knows the true number, and a couple have been found. The dead bodies have been found of people who were hostages. So nobody really knows the number, but what they're negotiating as of Wednesday is for 50 hostages to be released. Many of them are American citizens, not all. There's a little 3-year-old girl, and they're talking about having her released to her great aunt. Both of her parents have been killed. But that's the deal. Now, here's the problem. Here's the issue. There's a proposal. It has not been, as of Wednesday, it had not been finalized. It's just a proposal. Once the proposal, everybody agrees, Netanyahu, Biden, whom all else agree, Israel's parliament has to also then agree. And there are two extremists on the Netanyahu cabinet who are saying they will not agree. So they're just saying they will not agree. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't go through, but it means that Netanyahu, who I believe has some ambivalence about this deal, but he's getting a lot of pressure. The hostage families have marched on his home. They want their people, they want their relatives out. And so it's going to be tricky for him, but it's likely to happen. What in exchange for the 50, it's going to be women and children, in exchange for the 50 hostages being released, Israel has agreed to some form of a cessation of hostilities. They do not want to call it a ceasefire, but they have agreed to up to as many as 4 to 6 hours a day for 4 to 6 days of no bombing. So the supplies can get in, so that people can go back to their homes and all of that. Now, it's a weak, it's not as strong as a lot of people would like, but that's what we have. And so that's what we have to deal with. It's not, it's better than nothing, but many people, especially many pro-Palestinian Israelis, feel that this is just not enough. So it is, like I said, it is what it is, and it's better. They will be able to bring in, the last number I saw, about 300 trucks worth of supplies. That would include things like water, fuel. One of the last hospitals cannot operate at all because they have no fuel. So the doctors cannot do what they need to do. We know that earlier this week, 28 babies were airlifted to Egypt for treatment. At least 4 babies died because of a lack of fuel. That meant no incubation and all of that. So it would be humanitarian for this deal to go through. It just hasn't gone through. finally yet. Now, let me just say this while I talk about this. You know, I understand nobody likes what happened on October 7th. Hamas attacked Israel. Nobody likes it. But let's talk about proportion. Apparently about 1,400 and maybe a lower number Israelis were killed. To date, we're looking at 13,000 Palestinians, most of them not military, just children, young adults, elders. So, you know, there's an issue of proportion here. And for an eye leaves everybody blind, but you say you took my eye, so I'm going to take 4 years. Well, I don't have 4 eyes. So what is it that you're going to take? Yeah. And that's where we are. And the Western media is extremely biased from my perspective. I just watched a piece on CNN earlier this morning, and they were talking about this woman who she was crying. She had lost, you know, her family in the strike on October 7th. And I'm thinking, okay, well, how many Palestinians lost their family? Can we get their story too? Can we hear about them too? Because if you believe in the equality of human life, then we have to celebrate all life and mourn all loss of life.
That's right. Dr. J, before we run out of time, it was an exciting time over in Southeast. Let's talk about Marion Barry Avenue. I'm telling you, I had a meeting. I couldn't go. I was so excited. I did see part of Denise Roland Barnes had it on Facebook Live. Tell me about it, though.
Oh, it was so exciting. I was so happy to be there. You know, Dr. King met Marion Barry at Shaw University when Marion was one of the founders of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And so it's very fitting now, so many years later, that Marion Barry Avenue bisects Martin Luther King Avenue. So it's when Barry meets King. And that's exciting. It was a beautiful day of until it got cold, but that's another story. But it was a beautiful day, sunny, a lot of people out. I mean, there were a lot of people out. And they were out celebrating. There were young people. The mayor was there, and she spoke. And, you know, she was very good in detailing some of her accomplishments, which her refrain was, and Marion would be proud. And many of the things that she lifted up, Marion would be proud. If you look at that corner there where Marion Barry used to be Good Hope Road and Martin Luther King, 10 years ago, it didn't look anything like that. You got vital businesses. You got a lot going on. So it was really very, very exciting and a lot of great speakers. Of course, Cora Berry did her thing and talked about the hard work, and it really was a hard work and a group effort. There, of course, was opposition. You know, there always will be opposition. But whatever that opposition was, when the legislation was introduced, it passed. Phil Mendelssohn, Jack Evans, many of the, melanin deficient members of city council were there. Trayon White was very, very good in his comments. He, of course, is the councilman from Ward 8, he has the space that Marion Barry once occupied. So I was happy to be there. It was fun, but it was also very meaningful and impactful. There was music. What's this person's name? Sugar Bear?
Yeah, you know, EU, Experience Unlimited. They used to be at Georgia Avenue Day every year, but he does a lot of things on his own now. Sugar Bear.
Well, Sugar Bear was out there, and they kept that go-go music going.
I know they did.
You know, a good time was had by all, but this is more than a good time. There are two things that I want to say. Number one, we don't necessarily, you know, you cannot walk down 5 blocks in D.C., and I'm exaggerating slightly, without seeing some Confederate statue, somebody who was in the Civil War. We got all kind of white men on horses all over the city. And so we have a statue to Marion Barry. We have streets named after Lottie Dottie and everybody who didn't mean anything to anybody. And now we have Marion Barry Avenue. So as Cora Berry said, you will never be able to forget Marion Barry's name, because whenever you have to tell somebody where to go, you have to turn right on Marion Barry Avenue. And so I love that. So it's the statues and the naming, and we Black people have to be far more, what do I want to say? We want to preserve our legacy. We have to be far more protective of our legacy. And part of our legacy is Marion Barry. And when you think about Marion Barry, he was a dear friend. Mary and I had good times and would laugh and just, he was a trip, and a good trip. But sometimes he'd niggle at me and, as we did with each other. But he was, he was a good man. He loved two things. He loved black people and he loved Washington, D.C. And while the Marion Barry Avenue is in Ward 8, he made a difference in every ward in this city. And we can't let anybody forget it.
That's right. All right. Well, that sounds like a great conclusion to our show this week. I thank you for being my guest today. I already know that every week you could just keep going. So I'm so sorry that we can only let you do half, but today you filled in for this emergency, and we thank you.
And let's just put Dana Stebbins on the altar and pray for her and her nephew and give her my best and tell her we're all pulling for her and her nephew. And this is a really sad, hard time to have tragedy in the middle of all these holidays. But we know that we are always protected.
Yeah, she said that's her sister's son. And I know because I got nephews, and it's a hard thing if something happened to them. All right,
instead of having one of my little brats, I don't know what I do. I call them little brats, say 40 and 37. But,
yes.
But I would be bereft if anything happened to either one of them.
Well, I just we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and pray that everybody will be safe on their travels, flights, and on the road, and wherever you're going to grandma's house, whatever it is. We pray that you have a blessed and safe Thanksgiving. Join us at the All Nations Baptist Church this Wednesday if you don't have anything to do. We like to come out and pray and thank and give thanks for something before we come home and have our dinner. Our pastor's Reverend Dr. James Coleman. We're going to start at 10 a.m. when at number 2 Rhode Island Avenue, Northeast, the church with the red doors. We hope that this show with Dr. Julianne Malveaux today was inspirational to you. She's talked to us about politics and the economy, and we're going to come back with with Attorney Dana Stebbins in December. We didn't have any more openings for her to fill in now, but she's going to come in on December the 22nd, Christmas weekend. That's an open date that she's going to do. All right, Earl Nightingale once said, words, thoughts, and deeds have a boomerang effect. So be careful what you send out. Scripture says, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. I'm your host, Lyndia Grant. Until next week, I ask that you will think on these things. Good day.
Thank you for listening to The Lyndia Grant Show. Think on these things with your host, Lyndia Grant.